What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over my top 20 wide receivers of all time. A lot of the wide receivers in this video are older, like 90s, 2000s, but I will tell you there are a couple who are playing in the NFL currently. But starting off at number 20, we have Steve Smith Sr., who was only 5'9", but in 2005, he led the NFL in catches, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. He was known for his time on Carolina, but he also did spend 3 years in Baltimore, and he has basically secured a spot as a Hall of Famer, a future Hall of Famer. Next up at number 19, we have Reggie Wayne, who for most of his career had Peyton Manning throwing passes to him, but that was not the only reason. It's not like Peyton Manning carried his career or anything. He is ranked 10th all time in career receiving yards, had over 1,000 yards in 8 different seasons, including a league leading 1,510 yards in 2007. Caught over 100 passes 4 times throughout his 14-year career. So he's definitely a Hall of Famer. I believe he's already in the Hall of Fame. He is one of the best of all time. Next up at number 18, we have Raymond Berry. Raymond Berry, I didn't know about this guy, honestly, because as you can see by this picture, he is one of the older receivers in this video. I don't believe he is still alive today, but he was Hall of Fame as a player, and then even as a coach, he went Hall of Fame with the Arkansas Razorbacks, I believe, and I believe he coached an NFL team as well. But he won 2 NFL championships, but remember, this is before the Super Bowl time. He had Johnny Unitas as his QB, and he was definitely one of the top receivers during his time. Led the league in receptions 3 times, receiving yards 3 times, receiving touchdowns twice. He was elected into the Hall of Fame just a couple years ago, and he had 6 Pro Bowl appearances, and 3 times he was on the All-Pro first team. Next up at number 17, we have Michael Irvin, who at the moment is a very popular commentator and announcer. And back in the 90s, the Dallas Cowboys were without a doubt the most dominant team in the league. And Michael Irvin was one of the stars of their team. They won 3 Super Bowls with him, and as well as his QB Troy Aikman, who was on the team at the time. And this receiver is going to be remembered as one of the best players in general of the 1990s, in my opinion. He made 5 straight Pro Bowlers from 91 to 95. He led the league in receiving in 1991, without a doubt a Hall of Fame player. Now, just before, a couple years before Irvin was dominant in the league, we had Art Monk, who was mainly a part of the Washington Redskins, although he was also on the Jets for a year, I believe. During his time, though, with the Redskins, he caught 888 passes, and nearly 2/3 of them went for first downs. He retired as the franchise's all-time leader in receptions. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler and led the league in catches in 1984. Without a doubt, Hall of Famer, without a doubt. Next up at number 15, we have, well, I don't even need to explain it. You know who this guy is. Tyreek Hill, who is currently in the NFL and was on the Chiefs for most of his years, but at the moment is on his 3rd year, I believe, maybe 2nd year, on the Dolphins. Every year he's been dominant, gets over 1,000 yards pretty much every season. If he keeps this up, for sure. Even if he retired today, I believe he would be a Hall of Famer. But especially if he keeps this up, he'll for sure be in the Hall of Fame one day. Tyreek Hill is already at number 15 on my top 20 receivers of all time. All right, now before there was Tyreek Hill, there was Bob Hayes. This guy is nicknamed the Bullet, and for good reason. He was actually an Olympic sprinter before his time in the NFL. But with his time in the NFL, he was a 3-time Pro Bowler, made the All-Pro first team twice in his first 4 years, caught double-digit touchdown passes in 5 of his first 6 NFL seasons, and he was one of the fastest NFL players, and still is one of the fastest NFL players of all time. All right, next up at number 13, we have Marvin Harrison. Now, I'm sure this name sounds recognizable to you if you are new to the NFL, because his son, Marvin Harrison Jr., currently just got drafted at number 3 overall, I believe, in the draft, and is supposed to be an absolute superstar. But His father, if you didn't know, was a superstar on the Colts when he was playing in the NFL, and he had a 14-year career. He finished his career with 14,580 receiving yards, some of the best seasons ever by a wide receiver. 2002, he had a league leading 143 catches for 1,722 yards, eighth all time for the most receiving yards in a single season, double digit touchdowns in 8 straight seasons from 1999 to 2006, and he will go down as one of the best receivers of his generation. Next up at number 12, we have Isaac Bruce, who has recently been inducted into the Hall of Fame. One of the main weapons for the greatest show on turf. In 2002, Bruce totaled 119 catches for 1,781 yards and 13 touchdowns. He is fifth at the moment on the all-time receiving list, and there are just six pass catches with at least 15,000 receiving yards, and Bruce is one of them. So he is without a doubt one of the greatest receivers of all time. Honestly, I could have put him top 10, but there are some very, very good ones who I just couldn't keep out of the top 10, which you'll see in a second. Now at number 11, we have who is known as the best receiver of the 1960s. He set numerous records at the time with the Chargers. At the time, they were the San Diego Chargers. He led the league in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns on 3 separate occasions. He averaged over 100 yards per game twice and led the league in receptions. Led the league in yards per receptions in 1965 at 23.2 yards per reception. He was a first-team All-Pro selection 6 times and is currently in the Hall of Fame. Next up at number 10, we have Don Maynard, who is known to be the greatest player to ever put on a Jets jersey. Joe Namath was his quarterback for most of his career, and they won a Super Bowl together in Super Bowl number 3, but Maynard was probably not the best player on the field because Namath was out there, but he seems to be in his shadow quite a bit. But people forget how great Maynard was. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler, played 13 years with the Jets, and was near the top of the league every single one of those years. Number 9, we have Cris Carter, who is ranked 4th all-time in receiving touchdowns with 130. He led the league in touchdowns on 3 occasions, including he had 17 in 1995. He went over 1,000 yards in 8 straight seasons from 1993 to 2000, and he scored double-digit touchdowns 5 times and is currently in the NFL Hall of Fame. Next up at number 8, we have Tim Brown, who had a 17-year career and was very consistent throughout those years. He had 1,000 yards in 9 straight years from 1993 to 2001. He was named to the Pro Bowl 9 times throughout his career and currently is in the top 10 in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. Next, at number 7, we have Calvin Johnson, who retired at age 30 and only played 9 years in the NFL, but he is number 7 on my list. But he could be top 3 or 2 if he spent longer in the NFL. But since he was only there for 9 years, I believe I can only put him at number 7. But he holds the single season receiving record with 1,964 yards, a 7-time Pro Bowler, named to the first team All-Pro 3 times. He is a future Hall of Famer and probably the best receiver in Detroit Lions history. Next up at number 6, we have Larry Fitzgerald, who was in the league only 3 years ago, but he is one of the best receivers ever and one of the best players of the last 10 years, in my opinion. He was an 11-time Pro Bowler. He led the league in catches twice and has 9 seasons with over 1,000 yards. He led the league in touchdowns twice and second all-time on the all-time receiving list with 17,083 yards. His 5th all-time in touchdowns with 120. We have now entered the top 5, and we have Steve Largent up next. There are only 10 receivers to have scored 100 touchdowns, and Steve Largent is one of them. He held the record for receiving touchdowns at the time of his retirement. The 7-time Pro Bowler is the best player in Seattle Seahawks history, arguably, and he led the NFL in receiving yards twice during his career. Next up, we have an older player, as you can see by this picture. Don Hutson was a football player back in 1935 to 1945. And because he played so long ago, a lot of people forget about him. But I did my research and I found out that he was an 8-time All-Pro first team, and he led the league in catches 8 times and receiving yards and touchdowns 7 times each during his career. He is one of the best receivers, definitely the best receiver of his time, and I had to put him in the top 5 of my list. Next, number 3, we have Terrell Owens, who, I believe he was entered into the Hall of Fame in 2021, maybe 2022, but he is one of the best players of all time. You could have put him even 2, but I have another player in mind for that one. He ranks 3rd all time in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. He was named first team All-Pro 5 times. He saw great success with 3 teams. He did not spend much time in Philly, but he played for the Super Bowl team for them with a broken leg. He is known for his touchdown celebrations, and he is number 3 on my list, but we have 2 players left, so stick around to see who they're going to be. All right, you know who this guy is. This is Randy Moss. He set the tone for his career early when he led the league in touchdowns with 17 during his rookie season, led the league in receiving touchdowns 5 times, and was named first team All-Pro 4 times. And he holds the record for he holds the single season record for receiving touchdowns with 23 back in 2007. And I could have put him number 1, but I think you know who's going to be number 1 right now. He's second. This dude is second all time in receiving touchdowns and 4th in yards. And you heard me. I said second all time in receiving touchdowns. Now let's see who number 1 is. Yes, you guessed it. It is Jerry Rice. Of course it is. The greatest receiver of all time, in my opinion. Maybe Randy Moss could be up there. Maybe a couple others you could put in that conversation. But no, it is without a doubt Jerry Rice. He is an 11-time Pro Bowler and was named first team All-Pro 10 times, led the league in catches twice, and receiving yards and touchdowns 6 times each. He was an incredible big game receiver, and his records are pretty much impossible to match. He has 22,895 receiving yards, which is 5,812 more than second place on the list. Second place, it has about 17,000, so this guy is over 5,000 more than him. And he caught 197 touchdowns, which is 41 more than Randy Moss at number 2. And he leads the league all time with 1,549 catches. And the next closest player is 171 away. And without a doubt, Jerry Rice is the greatest receiver of all time. And that's going to be it for me. If you made it this far, be sure to subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Leave a comment on what you thought I did well on this list. If you think some players should be swapped around, tell me in the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day. God bless.